for everybody for meeting us. We're going to go live on YouTube. I guess we are now. Cool. So thank you everyone for joining today. This is going to be our last caucus, just the way the session happens. We're kind of winding down here. So this kind of is a nice way to end it with this plan that came out of the Older Vermonters Act that we passed last year, Act 156. So today we're just gonna, kind of have a discussion, maybe go over what's in this plan. And I know that it's gonna come up before the Human Services Committee, I think this week, right, Teresa? I left before any times were kind of pinned down, but.
Actually, yes, actually, Commissioner White and Director Jang are going to be getting invitations this afternoon. Hopefully, it's short notice, but we're trying to fit things in depending upon the floor schedule. So we are hopeful that they will be able to, one or both of them would be able to join us tomorrow morning for a review by the House Human Services Committee. So we, for people who might not be familiar with the Older Vermonters Act that was passed last year, we sort of set in place a process for the Secretary of Administration working in collaboration with Dale and with the Health Department to bring us back sort of an outline of the process that they'll use to actually develop the plan for aging well. And we did that on purpose, just because our committee likes to have their fingers on things, and we wanted to, ensure that the kinds of things that we were thinking about in the legislation would be covered by the process that's laid out by the administration. So hopefully they'll be testifying tomorrow. So if you are so inclined, you can certainly watch us on YouTube or watch later on YouTube. So yeah, that's the process that we're going to be following in our committee.
And one of the things we really talked about was the fact that there's many parts of state government that affect the lives of older Vermonters. So that's why we wanted to see it coming from the administration, because Department of Health, Department of Children and Families with kinship care and all the different parts of state government. We wanted to make sure that if we're going to have some sort of a plan that it can kind of really look at all of the different parts of state government and how we can all work together collectively to make sure people are taken care of. So, do we, Commissioner, would you would you like to say a few words, or do you want to go over some of the stuff that's in here, or Angela, if you'd like to, before kind of open it up to some discussion? So, thank you.
I was just thinking. Brian, maybe you can put the link to their report. It is on our committee's webpage under documents, and it's under Agency of Administration. If you wouldn't mind putting a link in the chat, that would be awesome. Then people can sort of open it up as Angela and Monica go through it.
Can you find that, Brian? If not, I can.
Absolutely, I'll grab it right now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, sure. So I think maybe, so Angela is here. So I think maybe I'll just tee it off with just a really high level overview of the process that we engaged in to develop the content of the report, and then maybe ask Angela to jump in on specifics and walking through. But so Angela was the primary, along with Connor O'Day, our director of our state unit on aging, working very closely in concert with Rhonda Williams of the Vermont Health Department to frame this out to essentially really kind of codify the action steps for how do we move forward as a state to have a plan in place for aging well, and as Rep. Wood noted, across all of our sectors. So this definitely transcends the Agency of Human Services, and we have engaged upon discussions with the Agency of Administration for implementation of the plan, and of course this was submitted by the Agency of Administration, and we have had discussions with them on on what this entails and then moving forward in terms of next steps. I think, it's certainly ambitious, and one of the items are broken out in terms of the steps. The summary is on page 2. So researching other states' processes and plans and analyzing resource needs, that's key because there will be additional resource needs. So kind of quantifying what that entails is a considerable part of what will need to happen to make sure that this is successful moving forward. We also recommend establishment of an advisory committee to oversee this work, to do a baseline assessment of where we are now versus where we would need to go, developing the plan, disseminating and promoting. So with all of our community partners and really having everyone at the table, implementing the plan, monitoring the progress thereof, and with a key highlight to engage stakeholders throughout the process, so that this is not a top-down kind of process that's just happening, but that everyone is at the table, because this impacts all of us. And so this plan here is the proposal for how we would move it forward. I think Angela and Connor and Rhonda really worked really hard to be inclusive and capture all the steps. And we absolutely welcome legislative input on the steps moving forward. But Angela, would you like to jump in and kind of walk through some of the highlights specifically?
Sure. Let me make sure I've got it. I only have one screen. I want to have you and the document up in front of me. Hi, everybody. Angela Smith-Jang, Director of the Adult Services Division here at Dale. This has been really good, interesting, and exciting work to embark on. I know we're only at the very beginning of the process, but already lots of good engagement, input, ideas from Vermonters incorporated into this process proposal. So we did in the proposal, it does outline the work done to engage people in the development of the process proposal. So we had a live meeting on Teams and engaged stakeholders that way. We also received a lot of good written comments as well to include in the process proposal. So the version that was submitted to the legislature incorporates all of those, the feedback from stakeholders. And so we wanted to start things off really by looking at what's happening across the country, because this idea of a master plan on aging or an action plan for aging well came from a presentation that the SCAN Foundation gave to the legislature in early 2020 about work that was happening in California around the development of a master plan. And meanwhile, other states have been embarking on this effort as well. So wanting to really start by looking out and saying, what are other states doing? What have they learned? What insights can they give us? What resources do they need in doing this work, and being able to do sort of an assessment of what it will take for Vermont to embark on this big body of work. So that's sort of action step number 1. We'll do that from the State Unit on Aging side in collaboration with Department of Health and Agency of Administration. One thing that I think it's important too, that in the SCAN Foundation, in looking at across states that have done this work already, some key things that they have highlighted as important in developing this kind of plan is really having key leadership invested from the beginning, from the administration and the legislature. Really making sure that priorities are data-driven and well-ranked and clear, so that there's a strong rationale for the direction that we're going. Trying to be as comprehensive as possible. So not only talking about the services that we want provided to older Vermonters, but how are we going to finance that? What is it going to take in terms of workforce, in terms of housing, in terms of transportation, and across sectors and across levels of government? really ensuring that there's stakeholder involvement from the very beginning and through every stage of the development and implementation, and monitoring and evaluation of the plan. So keeping engagement ongoing, and really ensuring that that means consumers, providers, policymakers, the voices of Vermonters are all at the table in that process. And then really ensuring that we're accountable to the plan. So having really clear reporting timelines with clear measurable outcomes will be really important into making this a valuable and a meaningful process, not just a plan that we put a lot of work into and then it sits on a shelf and doesn't get taken off for another 10 years till it's time to revise, but really having it being a living, breathing blueprint to guide our collective work going forward. That's our goal. Those are, it's a big goal, but I think we can get there. I think there's the momentum in Vermont to make that happen. So once we are able to do a little bit of that research and gathering information on how it's worked in other states and what we can learn from that process, we'll simultaneously begin by establishing an advisory committee, as Monica said. And we'd like that to have broad membership, similarly to the way that the Older Vermonters Act working group was broad in including a range of stakeholders representing various sectors and agencies and constituents. So really hoping to see a similar kind of spread. Also really wanting to have the voice of older Vermonters and family caregivers with lived experience as part of that advisory committee as well, including people from underserved or minority groups, so BIPOC, LGBTQ, our native Vermonter population, etc. So really trying to be as inclusive as possible, and making sure that in the creation of that advisory committee that it's very clear and transparent with the public in terms of how we go about creating that and the opportunity for involvement. Once we do that, yes, then it's the baseline needs assessment, which will be another process in and of itself. Really, the goal, I think here, what we'd like to do, at least this is how it's laid out in the proposal, is to use the principles from the Older Vermonters Act, those 8 core principles that were put into statute as the guideposts for aging well in Vermont, using those as the guideposts for what we want to look at in terms of how are we doing, what are the needs, what are the gaps as we think about self-determination, safety and protection, a coordinated system of services, financial security, optimal health and wellness, social connection and engagement, housing, transportation, community design, and family caregiver support. It's a lot. It's a lot to try to really do an assessment of, but we need to get that baseline to understand where we want to prioritize and create some strategic goals around in the plan. So that assessment, again, needs to be a really inclusive process. We'll use whatever resources we can come up with to be able to do that, whether it's the existing resources that we have in Dale, VDH, AOA combined, or if we're able to secure some additional resources, we'll obviously be able to do more with it with a needs assessment. The advisory committee will be there as part of the process every step along the way, pulling in additional stakeholder engagement as well throughout that process. When we think about developing the plan, in some ways wanting to keep it simple and strategic and kind of visionary, but not too deep in weeds of particular programs and things, but at the same time, really wanting it to be comprehensive and as global as we can. So I encourage folks, if you're kind of interested in seeing what these kinds of plans can look like, is to take a look at some of the other states and what they've done, how they've laid it out in terms of big picture priorities and then measurable objectives and strategies and outcomes. Certainly, we want to have goals that are aligned with those Older Vermonters Act principles. We also, the Act 156, Older Vermonters Act, called out that we need to have specific goals too around emergency preparedness and public health emergency planning. So ensuring that we're able to do that well going forward in the plan. Following goals, strategies to get there, performance measures, also benchmarks and timelines to really, like we said, hold our collective selves accountable to achieving what we're stating in the plan, and then constant sort of monitoring of the plan to say, so at various points, are we there? Are we not there? What do we need to revise? Being able to have the flexibility to do that. It is added in here on page 5. If it hasn't been done already, another part of the plan is to do a review of Medicaid reimbursement rates for home and community-based services, if that hasn't already been conducted by the state. So we'll see where that work goes between now and the time that a plan is developed, and be able to include that if that's needed at that point. So where was I going? Oh, lastly, on the development of the plan, given the breadth and depth of what we're trying to achieve in this action plan, we really think it needs to be kind of a longer term 10-year plan versus a shorter, 3 to 5 year type plan. We have the state plan on aging, which we're required to redo every 4 years. We have the state health improvement plan, which is on that shorter time frame as well, and other similarly timed plans. Meanwhile, this can really be that sort of big picture, longer term blueprint for guiding us forward. Not that we won't take a look at it in the meantime and revise and redirect if needed, but really thinking out a little bit further. Following the development of the plan, as Monica said, develop and promote the plan, or disseminate and promote the plan, really wanting to do that in concert with all of our partners, with our stakeholders, with the administration, with the legislature, and really using the promotion of the plan as a further opportunity to engage even more Vermonters in this work, to raise awareness about the importance of the services and supports that are available, and to bring more people into the fold, whether it be to volunteer, to work, to receive support, etc. Implementing the plan, monitoring the plan. This section of the proposal is relatively short, but obviously when we get there will be quite a bit of work. But really using, if we develop the plan well with those key measures and benchmarks and timelines and those accountability levers in there, then monitoring the progress of the plan will be will flow from that, I think. We want to make sure that we're able to tie the work of this plan into other things like our performance scorecards across state government. And then again, the advisory committee will play an important role in helping to monitor the plan. It's suggested that they meet twice a year to be able to review that progress, recommend any modifications or additional resources that are needed. I think it'll be an evolving process. And then, of course, last but not least, truly engaging stakeholders throughout the process in a meaningful way. So not just checking the box that we've posted something on the website for people to comment on, but really ensuring that in collaboration with all the partners and stakeholders engaged in this, that we're able to really have it be a collaborative process from start to finish. And there's so many, so many different folks who have thoughts, who have ideas, who have opportunities to share their own experience with supports and programs. So that's all really, really going to be important along the way. Finally, page 7 outlines a very basic timeline for these action steps, pretty high level. And again, this will, potentially get modified along the way as we go, but really, kind of getting the sign off from the legislature, the approval of the proposed process in this time frame, May, June, to then simultaneously be able to begin some of that research of other states' plans and processes in May this summer, create the advisory council this summer as well. It'll probably give ourselves a year for that baseline assessment. And then be able to develop the action plan the following year. So thinking sort of July 22 to June 23 for that development of the plan. Then fall in about 2023, we'll be able to disseminate and promote the plan and actually begin the implementation of the plan. What's nice too is that we're in the current process of working on our required state plan on aging for the Older Americans Act work. And this will be able to kind of flow in terms of timeline. It also works well that will be developed, and then this action plan for aging well will come from that, in addition to the work that the health department's doing on their health improvement plan. So hopefully the goal is for these to align and support each other, rather than being developed in silos or at cross purposes. That's the goal. And I think just some additional things for legislators to think about it. We kind of added this in the conclusion, because the action plan for aging well, or Act 156 in the Older Vermonters Act, didn't necessarily create a specific role for the legislature going forward in this action plan. But so the question is, what role makes sense for you all? What recommendations, further recommendations, do you have to help us move this forward? We will have to continue to kind of evaluate resources, staffing, all of those things to make this happen. But I'm hopeful that we'll be able to do it. So I'll stop there and see if there are any particular questions or comments or thoughts.
Angela, I had one, well, probably more than one, but I'll save them for committee time tomorrow. But one of the things that we seem to have available, I'm not sure, with the new ARPA guidance just coming out, but is money in housing and money to develop housing. And we know that affordable, accessible housing is really at that we really need more of it in Vermont. And, I see on the committee that you're looking at housing providers and looking at SASH. And I really am wondering, we need actually more housing developers and people who fund housing. So like VHCB, Vermont Housing Conservation Board, or, maybe even a private residential developer or something like that. In thinking about, because I know that certainly Cathedral Square knows how to develop housing, but in thinking also about other parts of the state and looking at the folks who are going to be just like really engaged in that. And I see we have Representative Troiano, who is vice chair of the House General Committee that deals with that. So I just sort of put that out there as a key element as we go forward. And Chip, I saw you had your hand up.
I did actually. I was wanted to address the disability community. As folks with relatively serious disabilities grow older, their needs grow as well. You know, in the scope of all of this plan, I see a place for the disability community to be included in this. So that was the comment that I wanted to make. As far as housing goes, well, it's like trying to plug water coming over the dam. It's or through the dike, I should say. We still have about 1,900 homeless individuals in Vermont. 240 of them are children, and about 650 of them on July 1st will be turned out of motels, which are going to open up, and it's going to pose even a larger logistics problem. So, you know, we keep working on it. This VHAB program that I think Representative Wood mentioned has been quite successful. We're going to put more money into that. Senate is considering even a larger sum of money to be put into that. You know, of course, there's no age target in these housing bills, but there is some rental arrears funding for folks. For instance, I would believe they would qualify if they were living on Social Security benefits, retirement benefits. They would qualify for that, and that will be coming down fairly soon, and it'll allow rents to be paid forward as well as back rents. So, you know, those are some of the things we've been working on.
Chip, can I just ask you a question about, do you know of those 1,900 folks, how many of those are age 60 and over?
No, I don't think we have a breakdown on that, Teresa. I haven't heard what that proportion would be in all the time that we've been discussing it. No, I don't know.
So,
I know how many children, but not how many seniors.
Right, which is sort of a dilemma that we in the legislature face a lot. We think a lot about children, and so I'm just going to send you back with a task, Representative Troiano, and that is to find out of those 1,900, I believe we have this information somewhere, but out of those 1,900, how many of those would be people 60 and over? Because, you know, I appreciate the fact that there's sort of not age guidelines around the housing investments. But I think we have some national statistics around homelessness and older individuals. And it would be great if we had that information here in Vermont as well. And maybe we do. So
it occurs to me that OEO may have some numbers on that. I'll reach out to them.
yes, thank you.
I can get something for you. Yeah.
Thanks so much. And Representative Campbell, nice to see you.
Yes, hello, Teresa. I wanted to follow up on the concept of long-term housing that you sort of alluded to earlier. Yeah, I think it's a really huge issue, providing older folks with a place to go, so that not only so they have a place to go that is you know, sort of more suited to their needs, you know, one floor and low maintenance and all of that, but it also frees up their house that they're moving out of for the rest of the housing market. And so, yeah, we've certainly been focusing on that here in St. Johnsbury quite a lot. But it does take investment and some sort of support for private developers in order to make that happen. We had somebody who was interested in building, I think it was something like a 350 unit building here in St. Johnsbury. They were doing a development. They're from Quebec, I believe, and they were starting to do a development in the Newport area when COVID hit. I don't know whatever happened to that, but the St. Johnsbury development has sort of fallen through the cracks, at least for the time being. But it's just really important that we find ways to support not only the nonprofit housing developers, but also the private ones. So anyway, just want to throw that out there.
Thank you. I also just wanted to thank Representative Campbell. I don't know, people may have seen him on the news in the last 24 hours around the contractor registration. bill, but that is a great benefit for older Vermonters who tend to be folks who are targeted for some of these less than desirable people out there putting themselves forth as qualified contractors. So I think that I just wanted to let people on this call know that that's another bill out there that does have an impact on older Vermonters.
Yeah, that report is, as happens, told their story, but not the story I wanted them to tell.
Yeah. Other questions for Angela? Other thoughts you want to share about things that are important for the department and the health department to consider in this process of developing this plan for aging well? I know there's lots of opinions out there, folks.
And just to point to the housing in Lamoille County, they had 365 people apply for housing through Lamoille Housing Partnership, and a third of them were over 65. So it's definitely, and I brought that up in the past, but definitely something we're going to have to be addressing in the future.
And the future is now, for sure. Well, the work that you've put in, Angela, and your colleagues in sort of laying out the steps that you're proposing to take, I appreciate that. It's actually nice to see some of the work from the Older Vermonters Act now starting to take place. And we realize that it is a long-term, some of the changes that need to be made are really long-term in nature. I think about public transportation as one area that definitely impacts older Vermonters as they, some folks desire not to drive anymore, or some folks need help with accessing medical appointments and things like that. And appreciate the sort of depth and breadth of the folks that you've already contacted and folks that you're proposing to include. And particularly with regard to what other states have done, doing a little bit of a deeper dive into what other states have done, I think will really help inform what we can do here. And who knows, maybe we'll be the state that they'll be looking at next, the next state who wants to go in this direction. Sort of related to this, I know that former Commissioner Hutt and y'all had started a process to have the state be designated and as a, maybe you could say a little bit about that, because I don't know what the official designation title was, but and where that landed in the process. I know sort of COVID came and things took a severe right turn, but didn't know if there's been any progress on that.
Well, Monica, I'm happy to take that, or if you want to. I think our hope is that we're still going to get there. The designation is called Age-Friendly State, and it's through the World Health Organization and AARP have created this designation, and it's for states, or it really started at the local level with communities, towns, and cities saying, we commit to making our place a friendly place for aging, for people who are aging, which really means creating a place that is a livable community for people of all ages, as we're all aging. When you work to make spaces work for older Vermonters, you're working to make them great for everyone. So our goal is still to get there. COVID did kind of derail that process, but I think this work around the action plan for aging well will bring us back around to that, because the same sort of steps that we've outlined in the action plan for aging well are the same steps that you need to do to be an age-friendly state. So I think that we're going to get there. It's just a matter of taking some of those initial steps and then re-engaging with the administration around actually making that declaration that we're going to work towards that.
Okay. Well, that if you need any help from us, just let us know. I know that there had been efforts to sort of get the governor's attention around this last year, and obviously, things have taken a little bit of a turn there. So, but I think, as a state, certainly as a legislative body, it is, I think that it is a good thing to, highlight some of the things that we're doing, but also that are necessary, for us to continue to improve and be a place for all of us to age well in our home state. What about other questions? Any other questions or comments from folks? We look forward to hearing your testimony tomorrow. And rest assured, our committee will have plenty of questions, because they always do. And I just wanted to double check with Commissioner White. Just want to make sure, are you all set? Do you have any final comments you want to make on this topic before maybe Dan and I haven't talked about what to do next, but I just was thinking that there have been a couple of comments in the chat about how are we going to conduct business next year, and maybe we could take a quick poll about that. So Monica, you have anything you want to say to wrap us up on this topic? Or
I think I'd just like to put just a big shout out to Angela, just to a big back pat. This has been a huge, tremendous body of work that she has led, along with support from her team within the Adult Services Division, and it's just stellar. So just using the public platform here for a little bit of gratitude for some work that was very well done. So thank you so much, Angela, for that.
Well said, for sure. And I remember just last year, we had to sort of twist her arm to be even thinking about taking that job. So it's thank you for stepping up in that role, Angela. Yeah.
And so to your question about, next year, possibly looking at how we can run this caucus and still have participation of individuals, getting to the building can definitely be a hassle. Hopefully we get the same time slot. So, I think we'll probably see some technology that will be utilized. I don't know. I was reading the report that they put out on us going back. So hopefully we can just piggyback on that technology, with this caucus. We'll have to see as we get closer, but it would be good.
So, I saw a couple of comments in the chat, and it would be helpful just maybe like a quick show of comments in the chat about the people who would prefer to stay virtual. It does enable people from all over the state to participate, and it seems to be pretty efficient for a caucus like this. Hybrid, Ruby says hybrid. Maybe some topics in person and some topics like this.
If it was we wouldn't have trouble trying to find a room if it was. That seems to be the hardest thing down there, is just finding a place to hold this. But who knows? I think it'd be good. Always good to be in person. I'm looking forward to getting back for sure.
Great. Thank you for people in the comments. It looks like there's a leaning towards a hybrid, and honestly, room availability will be an issue, and we are likely, as Dan mentioned, to be spread out in different buildings in Montpelier. Don't know exactly how, don't know what they're going to land on in that regard, and some of the rooms that have been used for conference, for meeting space, will become committee rooms, it looks like. So the availability of even having meetings is going to be an interesting challenge next year. So it won't be, the one thing that we know and that we've been told is that if we are back in Montpelier next year, it is not going to look like it did before COVID. So there are going to be things that need to change. And Some of them, there will be an interim change, and then they're going to be putting forth a more long-term plan. I think there have been some folks who have felt like, yes, we've gotten along, but there's also a need for an additional expansion of the State House at some point in time. I don't know if I'll be around, but at some point in time there will be. So
Talking about that for a few years.
yeah. So is there anything anybody else wants to bring up? Since this is our last session of the year, and we have lots of experts on this call. So if there are any legislators that have any questions, we've got folks from all over the state on the call. So if there are any legislators that have any questions about, older Vermonter services or supports, now's your time to be able to call out and just ask the question. I'm sure there's somebody on this call who would be able to answer it.
Can I share one more update, Representative Wood? I was just thinking of another element of the Older Vermonters Act that is moving forward is the self-neglect working group. They had their launch meeting at the end of April, and things are off to a good start with that work, with subcommittees already launching into looking at the charges of the committee and the various areas that around data and prevalence and resources and things, and there'll be some research happening as well. So I'm glad to see that work is moving forward as well.
Thank you. That was an important piece as well. Thank you for bringing that up, Angela. Appreciate that.
Thanks for the update. All right. Well, thank you everybody for this whole session. Appreciate everyone's participation. So I'm sure we'll all cross paths at least at some point, but until next year. And last thing I do want to, I know I already thanked Brian at the beginning, but thank you so much, Brian, for all your help. I really appreciate that. So
thank you.
Note to end on, having our intern. So